Hey guys, ever wondered what it would be like to be a Victorian magician? Picture this, you're standing centre stage, trying to look mysterious and professional while your wool costume is cooking you alive like a baked potato. It's like performing inside a wearable oven made of itchy fabric and broken dreams. Your top hat keeps sliding down over your eyes because it's 3 sizes too big and filled with a rabbit that won't stop moving. You're trying to do your grand disappearing act, but the trapdoor is stuck, so you're just awkwardly stamping on it while pretending it's part of the show. Your assistant just tripped over your cape and knocked over the table with all your props. A dove flies out early into the orchestra pit. The audience is loving it, but not in a good way. They're laughing at you, not with you. Someone in the back row just shouted, "Do it again," but you can't, because your assistant is sitting on the trapdoor eating a sandwich. The theatre owner is waving his hands from the wings because you've gone 10 minutes over, and the next act is a dancing bear that's getting impatient. If this chaos entertains you, smash that like button and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Let's dive into the absolute madness of being a Victorian magician and see why you wouldn't last after your first magic trick. Your day starts long before the sun comes up because you need to get to the theatre before anyone else. The streets are pitch black and freezing cold, and you're walking through what feels like an obstacle course of horse droppings. Every few steps your boot lands in something squishy. You can't see it, but you can definitely feel it. The smell hits you about 2 seconds later, that warm barnyard pong that seems to follow you everywhere in Victorian times. By the time you reach the theatre, your feet are cold, damp, and you're pretty sure something has soaked through your left boot. Not water, something worse. The theatre itself is freezing. There's no heating except for a couple of pathetic coal braziers that barely warm a radius of about 3 feet. You're wearing your street clothes, which are already a bit damp from the morning fog, and now you have to start hauling equipment around. Your props are heavy, really heavy. That trick table weighs about as much as a grown man, and you have to drag it across the stage by yourself. Your assistant won't arrive for another hour because they live on the other side of town, and the omnibus doesn't run this early. So you're alone, huffing and puffing, your breath making clouds in the frozen air. Your hands are so cold they've gone numb. You try to practice your card tricks, but your fingers won't bend properly. Cards keep slipping out of your grip and scattering across the stage floor. The stage floor, by the way, is filthy. It's covered in dust, bits of old rope, mysterious stains, and what looks like the remains of someone's dinner from 3 weeks ago. You get down on your hands and knees to pick up the cards and immediately regret it. Something sticky attaches itself to your palm. You don't know what it is. You don't want to know what it is. You wipe it on your trousers and carry on. Now you need to check your doves. Yes, you have live doves for your act. They live in cages backstage, and they are not happy about it. The smell back there is intense. Bird droppings have piled up despite your best efforts to clean them out every day. The ammonia stench makes your eyes water. You're breathing through your mouth, but that just means you can taste it instead. It's like licking a stable floor. The doves coo and flutter when you approach, which sounds peaceful until one of them manages to peck your finger hard enough to leave a bruise. You yell, drop the cage door, and now there's a dove loose backstage. Fantastic. You spend the next 20 minutes chasing a bird around in the dark while your stomach growls. You haven't eaten yet, because food costs money, and you're not exactly rolling in it. Magicians don't get paid much unless you're one of the big names performing in the West End. You're not. You're in a second-rate music hall in a dodgy part of town where half the audience is drunk by the time the curtain goes up. You finally corner the dove behind a stack of old scenery flats and grab it. The bird expresses its opinion of you all down your sleeve. Warm, wet, and utterly revolting. You now smell like a chicken coop. Your assistant finally arrives, and they look about as enthusiastic as someone heading to their own funeral. They're coughing. Everyone is always coughing in Victorian times. The air quality is terrible, and everyone has some sort of chest infection that never quite goes away. Your assistant hacks and wheezes their way through greeting you, and you take a step back because you really don't want whatever they've got. They're also carrying the costume trunk, which they drop on the stage with a thud that echoes through the empty theatre. Dust explodes upward in a cloud that makes both of you cough even harder. Time to get into costume. This is where things get really uncomfortable. Your stage outfit is made of heavy black wool decorated with cheap metallic thread that's already started to tarnish. It's tight around the chest and shoulders because you've put on a bit of weight since it was made, probably from eating nothing but bread and dripping for months on end. The collar is high and stiff, digging into your neck. The jacket has to be buttoned all the way up for the look to work, which means you feel like you're being slowly strangled. Under this you wear a shirt that hasn't been properly washed in about a week. Water is expensive and so is soap. You give your clothes a rinse when they get really bad, but mostly you just air them out and hope for the best. The jacket is lined with pockets. Secret pockets. Pockets within pockets. This is where you hide all your tricks. Cards, silks, coins, fake flowers, a collapsible cane, and various other bits and pieces. By the time you've loaded everything into place, you feel like you're wearing a piece of furniture. The weight pulls on your shoulders. You can already feel the spots where it's going to rub your skin raw by the end of the night. There's one particular seam right under your left arm that's basically a torture device. Every time you lift your arm to flourish a wand or produce a bouquet, it digs in. You've developed a permanent bruise there. It's purple and tender, and you've just accepted it as part of life now. Your assistant is struggling into their own costume, which is somehow even worse than yours. It's a tight-fitting outfit designed to make them look elegant and mysterious, but mostly it just makes them look uncomfortable. They're trying to fasten hooks up the back and failing miserably. You have to help, which means getting up close and personal with the fact that they really needed a wash. That ripe smell from earlier is now concentrated in an enclosed space. You hold your breath, fasten the hooks as quickly as possible, and step back, gasping. Your assistant doesn't seem to notice. Maybe they've gone nose blind to themselves. You hope you're not the same. The theatre manager arrives around mid-morning to check on things. He's a short man with a moustache that looks like a dead caterpillar glued to his upper lip. He smells of gin and cigars. He walks around the stage, inspecting your setup with a critical eye, poking at your props and making doubtful noises. He reminds you that you're on at 8 o'clock sharp, and if you run over your allotted time, you'll be fined. He also reminds you that ticket sales have been slow, and if tonight's house isn't good, you might be let go. No pressure. He leaves and you feel your stomach clench with anxiety. The gnawing hunger is now joined by nausea. Afternoon arrives, and with it comes the first disaster of the day. One of your main props is broken. The trick box, the one where your assistant is supposed to vanish from, has a panel that won't close properly. The hinge has come loose, and now the whole thing looks wonky. If the audience sees the panel hanging open, they'll figure out the trick immediately, and you'll be finished. You need to fix it, but you don't have proper tools. You scrounge around backstage until you find a rusty nail and a chunk of wood that might work as a makeshift hammer. You spend the next hour bashing away at the hinge, trying to bend it back into shape. Your thumb gets in the way at one point, and the pain shoots up your arm. You hop around the stage saying words that would get you thrown out of polite society. The bruise forms immediately, a dark purple spot right on the nail bed. It's going to throb for days. The fix holds. Barely. You test the panel a dozen times and it seems solid enough, though there's a concerning creak every time it moves. You'll just have to do the trick carefully and hope the whole thing doesn't collapse mid-performance. Your assistant looks at the box with deep suspicion and announces they're not getting in there unless you test it yourself first. Fair enough. You climb into the box, fold yourself into the hidden compartment, and immediately discover that someone has left half a sandwich in there. It's mouldy. The fuzzy green kind of mold that looks like it might be developing its own civilization. The smell in the confined space is overpowering, a sour tang that coats the back of your throat. You scramble out coughing and gagging, and your assistant finds the whole thing hilarious until you make them clean it out. By late afternoon, your nerves are jangling like bells. The theatre is starting to fill with staff. Stagehands wander in, moving scenery and adjusting lights. The gas lights, when they're finally lit, add a new dimension of misery. They're bright and hot, and they hiss constantly. The heat makes the theatre feel stuffy despite the cold outside. Within minutes, you're starting to sweat under all those layers of costume. The wool traps the heat against your skin. You can feel moisture gathering under your arms, down your back, behind your knees. Your collar is getting damp. The itching starts up again, worse than before. You want to tear the whole outfit off, but you can't. You're stuck in it for the duration. The stage manager arrives to go over the running order. You're third on the bill, right after a singer and a comedian. This is not a great spot. Third means the audience is still settling in, still chatting among themselves, still deciding whether they want to pay attention or just drink and heckle. You've performed in worse slots, but this isn't ideal. The stage manager is a harried woman with ink stains on her fingers and a permanent frown. She rattles off instructions about timing, about where to stand, about not blocking the sight lines. You nod along, but you're barely listening because your feet are killing you. Your boots are too tight, and you've been standing in them all day. Your toes feel squashed together. There's a blister forming on your heel. You can feel it with every step. That hot, raw sensation that tells you the skin is about to give up entirely. Finally, mercifully, you get a short break before the show. You collapse onto a stool backstage and try to gather yourself. Your assistant has disappeared somewhere, probably to find a chamber pot, because the nearest privy is outside in the yard, and it's absolutely disgusting. You've been out there once today, and that was enough. It's a wooden box over a pit, shared by everyone in the building, and it smells exactly like you'd expect. Worse, actually. The stench rises up like a physical force, strong enough to make your eyes water. There are flies even in winter. How are there flies? You don't know. You don't want to think about it. You held your breath the entire time and got out as fast as humanly possible. Sitting alone in the dim backstage area, you become aware of every ache in your body. Your shoulders hurt from hauling equipment. Your thumb throbs from where you bashed it. Your heel burns from the blister. Your stomach is doing uncomfortable things with that pie you ate earlier. You're sweaty, itchy, and exhausted, and you haven't even performed yet. You think about modern magicians for a moment, the ones in your own time, with their clean theatres and reliable equipment and audiences who aren't likely to throw things. They have no idea how good they've got it. They complain about tech rehearsals and lighting cues. They've never had to chase an escaped dove through a freezing theatre while wearing a costume that smells like it died. The noise from the front of house is getting louder. The audience is arriving. You can hear them tramping in, scraping chairs, shouting conversations across the room. Victorian audiences are not quiet or polite. They're rowdy. They've paid their money and they expect to be entertained. And if they're not entertained, they'll let you know loudly and possibly by throwing food. You peek through a gap in the curtain and immediately wish you hadn't. The theatre is packed, bodies crammed into every available space, People standing at the back because all the seats are full. The air is already thick with pipe smoke and that ever-present smell of unwashed humanity. It's like looking into a room full of people who've just finished working manual labour for 12 hours straight, because that's exactly what they are. Your assistant returns looking pale. They didn't make it to the privy in time and had to use a bucket backstage. Now the backstage area smells even worse than before. You're both too tired and nervous to care much. The stage manager appears and snaps at you to get ready. The first act is about to go on. You can hear the master of ceremonies shouting to the crowd, trying to quiet them down. It's not working very well. The comedian goes on first, and you can hear him clearly through the thin curtain. His jokes are crude and loud. The audience roars with laughter at some of them and boos at others. Someone throws something. You hear it hit the stage with a wet slap. The comedian doesn't miss a beat. He just incorporates it into his act. Professional. The singer is up next. She's got a powerful voice that cuts through the noise, but the audience isn't really interested. They keep talking over her. You feel sorry for her. At least with magic, you've got visual spectacle. People will shut up to watch something appear or disappear. Probably. Hopefully. The singer finishes to scattered applause and storms off stage looking furious. She brushes past you in the wings, and you catch a whiff of her perfume. Something floral that's trying desperately to cover up the same body smell everyone else has. It's not quite working. The combination is almost worse than just plain sweat. Then the stage manager is pushing you forward, and it's your turn. You step out onto the stage and the heat from the gas lights hits you like a wall. The lights are so bright you can barely see the audience beyond the first few rows, but you can certainly hear them. The noise doesn't stop when you appear. They're still chatting, drinking, settling in. You have to capture their attention fast, or you'll lose them entirely. You launch into your opening patter, speaking loudly and clearly, trying to project confidence you don't feel. Your voice sounds strange to your own ears, competing with the general din. You pull out your first trick, a simple card flourish to warm up. Your hands are shaking slightly. The cards are slippery from your sweaty palms. You manage it, just barely, and move straight into the next trick. Then the moment passes, and reality crashes back in. Your assistant has successfully vanished, but now they have to stay cramped in that tiny hidden compartment while you do the next 3 tricks. They're wedged in there, probably losing feeling in their legs, breathing stale, musty air in the dark. You know exactly how uncomfortable it is because you were in there earlier with the mouldy sandwich. You move through your routine as quickly as you can without rushing, producing flowers from your sleeve, making coins disappear and reappear, pulling the inevitable rabbit from your hat. The rabbit is not cooperative. It squirms and kicks and manages to scratch your wrist with its back claws. The sting makes you flinch, but you keep smiling. Never let them see you break. The audience is loving it. They're clapping and cheering, and for a few minutes you forget about the itching and the sweating and the throbbing thumb. But then you notice something terrible. Your collar is soaked through with perspiration. You can feel it clinging to your neck. Worse, you can feel drops of moisture running down your back, down your sides. The lights are absolutely roasting you alive up here. It's like standing inside an oven while wearing winter clothes. Your face must be bright red. You can feel the heat radiating off your skin. A drop of sweat trickles from your hairline down your temple. You want to wipe it away, but you can't, because you're in the middle of a trick and your hands need to be visible. Finally, you return to the vanishing box for the big reveal. You tap the sides with your wand, say the magic words, and open the panels with a flourish. Your assistant is supposed to be back in the box, having climbed back in through the concealed opening. But something's wrong. They're there, but they look awful. Their face is grey and they're moving stiffly. They climb out of the box and you can see they're struggling not to fall over. The audience doesn't notice anything amiss. They're applauding the completed trick. But you know your assistant is in trouble. They stagger slightly as they take a bow and you grab their arm to steady them. Up close you can see they're drenched in sweat, even more than you. The tight costume has left red marks across their torso where it's been digging in. You rush through your closing tricks. The finale involves producing a seemingly endless string of coloured silks from your pocket, each one tied to the next. It's a crowd pleaser, and it works. The audience gives you a decent round of applause as you take your bow. You and your assistant retreat backstage as quickly as dignity allows. The moment you're out of sight, your assistant collapses onto a stool and starts gasping for air. Their hands are shaking as they fumble with the costume fastenings. You help them get the worst of it loosened and they take huge gulping breaths. They stayed in that box for nearly 15 minutes. The air in there must have been absolutely foul. They're complaining of dizziness and nausea, and their legs have gone completely numb from being folded up. You need to get your assistant some water, but there's only one bucket of drinking water backstage, and it's shared by everyone. The ladle floating in it looks like it's never been washed. You fish it out and pour some water into a tin cup that's slightly rusty around the rim. Your assistant drinks it desperately, not caring about hygiene. You have some yourself because your throat is parched from all the talking and the heat. The water tastes metallic and slightly stale, but it's wet and that's all that matters. Your assistant is starting to get some colour back in their face. Feeling is returning to their legs, which means they're now experiencing pins and needles. They're grimacing and trying to shake out their feet, which look like they've been bound in those tight costume shoes for far too long. There's no time to properly recover because the theatre wants you out of the way. The next act is waiting to go on and you're blocking the wings. You and your assistant gather up your props as quickly as possible, hauling everything back to the storage area. The doves need to be checked on. You open their cages and find they've made an even bigger mess during the show. The smell punches you right in the nose. Your eyes water instantly. You're breathing through your mouth again, but that just means you can taste it. That sharp ammonia tang coats your tongue. The doves coo innocently, as if they haven't just created a biohazard in their cages. You're going to have to clean this out properly tomorrow. Tonight you just can't face it. You throw a cloth over the cages and leave them in the dark. Now comes the worst part of the evening. You have to wait around until the end of the show to collect your payment. The theatre manager won't hand over money until all the acts are finished and he's counted the night's takings. You can't go home and collapse like you desperately want to. You have to sit backstage in your disgusting sweaty costume and wait. Your assistant is in the same position. Both of you are too tired to talk much. You can hear the other acts performing. There's a strong man who grunts and shouts, making the floorboards shake. There's an acrobat who receives thunderous applause. There's another singer who fares slightly better than the first one. The show drags on for what feels like hours. Your stomach is growling again. That pie wore off hours ago, and you've burned through whatever energy it provided. You're genuinely hungry now, the kind of hunger that makes you feel hollow and slightly shaky. Your assistant is in the same state. They're slumped on a crate with their eyes closed, probably fantasizing about food like you are. You're thinking about a hot meal, something substantial and filling, maybe a chop with potatoes and gravy, or a thick stew with actual chunks of meat in it. But you know what you'll actually be able to afford is probably more bread and dripping, or if you're lucky, a bowl of soup from the chop house down the street. The cheap soup that's mostly water with a few vegetables floating in it, and a suspicious grey colour that suggests the pot hasn't been properly cleaned in weeks. The show finally ends, and the audience files out, leaving behind a trail of debris. You can see from the wings that the theatre floor is covered in discarded programmes, food wrappers, and several puddles of spilt drink. There's also a broken chair where someone got too enthusiastic. The cleaning staff will deal with it eventually, but for now, it just looks like a disaster zone. The theatre manager appears and starts doling out payments to the acts. He's in a slightly better mood because apparently it was a good house tonight. He counts out your coins with agonizing slowness, making sure you see him checking each one. Your payment is barely enough to cover your rent and food for the next few days. It's certainly not enough to save anything, or to buy new equipment, or to replace your rotting boots. You and your assistant split the payment according to your arrangement. They get slightly less than you because you're the main act, but it's still fair. They take their coins and disappear immediately, probably heading home to collapse. You need to pack up your equipment properly before you can leave. Everything has to be stored securely because theft is a real concern. You lock your props in a trunk and secure it with a padlock that looks sturdy, but probably wouldn't stop a determined thief. The trunk itself is battered and worn, held together with a rope in places where the leather straps have broken. You've repaired it so many times it's more patched than original material. Home is a single room in a boarding house that's seen better days, probably about 50 years ago. The building leans slightly to one side in a way that suggests the foundations are not doing well. You climb 3 flights of narrow stairs that creak with every step. The whole stairwell smells of boiled cabbage and chamber pots. Someone on the second floor is coughing, a wet rattling sound that echoes through the thin walls. You reach your door and fumble with the key in the darkness. The lock is stiff and you have to jiggle it just right to get it to turn. Finally it gives and you stumble inside. Your room is small, barely 10 feet on each side. There's a narrow bed, a chair, a tiny table, and a washstand with a basin. That's it. No decoration, no comfort, just the bare essentials. There's a small window, but you keep the curtain drawn because the view is just the brick wall of the building next door about 3 feet away. The room is freezing. There's no fireplace. You're allowed to use the communal fire downstairs, but it's gone out hours ago, and you're too tired to try to get it going again. You'll just have to survive the cold. You light a candle stub, the last one you have until you can afford to buy more. The flickering light throws dancing shadows on the walls, making the room look even smaller and more depressing. You peel off your coat and hang it on the hook on the back of the door. Your clothes are next. Everything smells of sweat and theatre and bird droppings and smoke. You should probably try to air them out, but there's nowhere to hang them except over the chair. You do your best, and then stand in your underwear contemplating the wash basin. The water in the jug is cold, obviously cold. It's been sitting here all day in an unheated room. There's a thin film of ice forming on the top. You crack through it with your finger and pour some into the basin. The shock of cold water on your hands makes you gasp. This is going to be unpleasant. You have a sliver of soap, almost worn down to nothing. You work up the tiniest bit of lather and try to wash off the worst of the day. The cold water on your face is brutal. Your teeth are chattering. You scrub your armpits and get hit with the full reality of how badly you smell. It's that particular combination of old sweat and fresh sweat layered together with top notes of wool and birdcage. Delightful. You do your best, but without hot water and proper soap, you're really just spreading the smell around. You dry off with a thin towel that's already damp from this morning and smells slightly sour. Everything you own smells slightly sour. That's just life. Getting into bed is the best moment of the day. The mattress is lumpy and the sheets are thin and not particularly clean, but after the day you've had it, feels like luxury. You blow out the candle to save what's left of it and curl up under your blanket. The cold is seeping in from all sides. Your feet are blocks of ice. You tuck them up under your nightshirt and hug your knees to your chest, trying to preserve body heat. The blister on your heel is burning, your thumb is throbbing, your back aches, your shoulders hurt. You're aware of every bruise and strain and sore spot. Sleep should come easily given how exhausted you are, but it doesn't. You're too cold and too uncomfortable. Also, the room above you has started making noises. Someone's walking around, heavy footsteps that make the ceiling creak. Then someone else in another room starts coughing again. That same wet, racking cough that goes on and on. Someone else is snoring, a rattling buzz that penetrates right through the walls. The building is full of people living on top of each other, and there's no such thing as quiet. You lie there in the darkness, shivering, listening to the symphony of human misery around you. Just as you're finally starting to drift off, you feel something crawling on your neck. Your eyes snap open. You know exactly what it is. Fleas. The boarding house is infested with them. Everyone's got them. They're a fact of life, like hunger and cold and constant tiredness. You can't see them in the darkness, but you can feel them. That tickling sensation as they move across your skin. Then the bite. A sharp little sting. Then another. Then another. They're having a feast. You scratch at your neck, your shoulder, your arm. The scratching just makes the itching worse, but you can't stop. You're covered in old flea bites already, little red bumps that never quite heal because you keep scratching them open. You eventually fall into an uneasy sleep full of strange dreams. You dream about performing, but everything goes wrong. The tricks don't work, the audience boos. Your costume falls apart on stage. You wake up several times during the night, each time cold and stiff and confused about where you are. The darkness is complete. You have no idea what time it is. Could be an hour after you fell asleep, or could be nearly morning. There's no way to know. You drift off again, and the dreams return, anxious and uncomfortable. When morning finally comes, it's announced by the sound of someone hammering on your door. You jerk awake, completely disoriented. Grey light is leaking around the curtain. Your landlady is shouting through the door that it's past 7 and she needs the weekly rent. You stumble out of bed, every muscle in your body stiff and complaining. You're still tired. You could sleep for another 5 hours easily. But that's not an option. You count out the coins from your payment last night and open the door just wide enough to hand them over. Your landlady counts them carefully, gives you a curt nod, and moves on to hammer on the next door. The cold hits you properly now that you're upright. The room is absolutely freezing. Your breath mists in front of your face. You can see frost on the inside of the window. Your clothes are still damp from last night. Putting them on is torture. The cold, damp fabric clings to your skin. You're shivering so hard your teeth are chattering. You pull on everything you own, layering it up, but you still feel frozen to the bone. Your boots are still damp too, and now they're also cold. Sliding your feet into them is like putting them into buckets of ice water. The broken blister screams in protest. You wince and bite your lip and force your foot the rest of the way in. Breakfast is whatever you can afford, which today is nothing. You spent too much of your payment on rent and you need to save the rest for other essentials. Your stomach growls in protest, but you ignore it. You've skipped meals before. You'll survive. There's a chop house that sometimes gives out free bread crusts to performers if you show up at the right time. You'll try that later. For now, you need to get back to the theatre. Those dove cages aren't going to clean themselves and you've got another show tonight. The thought makes you want to cry. You're already exhausted and the day hasn't even started. The walk to the theatre is a repeat of yesterday morning. Dark streets, freezing cold, horse droppings everywhere. Your body is moving on autopilot, Left foot, right foot, ignore the pain, keep going. You pass other people doing the same thing. Everyone looks grey and tired and miserable. No one makes eye contact. Everyone is locked in their own private struggle to get through another day. A cart rumbles past, carrying vegetables to market. The driver looks half asleep. His horse looks even worse. Its ribs are showing and its head hangs low. You feel a kinship with that horse. You're both just trying to keep going despite everything. Your assistant arrives mid-morning looking even worse than you feel. They clearly didn't sleep well either. There are dark circles under their eyes and they're moving like every joint hurts. They grunt a greeting and immediately slump onto a stool. Neither of you has the energy for conversation. You work in silence, checking equipment and running through the tricks half-heartedly. Your fingers are still stiff from the cold and you drop things repeatedly. Cards scatter across the stage. Your assistant doesn't even laugh this time. They just stare blankly while you crawl around picking them up. The trick box needs adjusting again. That repair you did yesterday is already coming loose. The panel is starting to sag, and there's a gap that will be visible from the audience. You find some wire and attempt to reinforce the hinge. Your cold fingers fumble with the wire. You stab yourself under the fingernail at one point, and have to stop and press on it until the sharp pain fades to a dull ache. Blood wells up under the nail, turning it dark purple. Another injury to add to the collection. Your hands are becoming a map of your profession. Bruises, scratches, burns from getting too close to the gaslights. Rough patches where the skin has been rubbed raw. By afternoon, you're so hungry you're starting to feel dizzy. Your assistant is in the same state. You pool your remaining coins and send them to buy something, anything, from the street vendors. They return with 2 baked potatoes that are lukewarm and undersalted, but taste like the best meal you've ever had. You devour yours in about 30 seconds, barely chewing. The potato sits heavy in your stomach, but at least it's something. Your body stops screaming at you quite so loudly. The dizziness fades a bit. You can think more clearly. Now comes the grim ritual of getting back into costume. The wool jacket is still damp with yesterday's sweat. You can smell it before you even put it on. That sour, musty odour that makes you gag. But you don't have another costume. This is it. You pull it on and immediately feel the cold, damp fabric against your skin. It's revolting. Within minutes, your body heat is warming it up, which just makes the smell stronger. You're essentially wearing a jacket made of your own dried sweat. Your assistant's costume is in the same state. You can see them grimacing as they fasten it. Neither of you comments on how bad the other smells. You've gone past the point of politeness. The theatre starts filling up again. Same routine as yesterday. Same rowdy crowd. Same haze of smoke and sweat. You peek through the curtain and see it's another packed house. Good for the theatre. Exhausting for you. You're going to have to perform with the same energy as last night, despite feeling like you've been trampled by horses. Your voice is already hoarse from the cold and the smoky air. Your throat feels scratchy and raw. You clear it experimentally and it hurts. You're probably coming down with whatever chest infection everyone else has. Just what you need. The show begins. First act goes on. You wait in the wings trying to warm up your hands and your voice. Your assistant is doing stretches, trying to loosen up their stiff muscles before they have to fold themselves into the box again. They look about as enthusiastic as someone about to visit a dentist. You both know what's coming. Another night of heat and sweat and strain. Another performance where anything could go wrong. Another crowd that might love you or might pelt you with rotten vegetables. It's all a gamble. Then you're on. The lights hit you and the heat is immediate. You're already sweating before you say your first line. Your voice cracks slightly as you begin the patter. You clear your throat and push through. The audience is chattier than last night, harder to capture. You have to work twice as hard to get their attention. Your first few tricks get polite but unenthusiastic applause. You're losing them. Panic starts to creep in. You move faster, talk louder, put more energy into every gesture. Your assistant joins you, and together you launch into the vanishing box routine earlier than planned. The trick works. The audience gasps and then applauds properly. You've got them back. Relief floods through you. You keep the momentum going, moving from trick to trick with barely a pause. The coins, the silks, the flowers, the rabbit, everything comes out smoothly. Your hands are working automatically, muscle memory taking over. You're barely thinking, just performing. Sweat is running down your face, down your back, pooling in uncomfortable places. Your collar is soaked again. The wool is starting to chafe. You can feel raw patches forming on your neck and under your arms where the fabric rubs. Your assistant is still trapped in the box. You're moving faster than last night, which means they've been in there even longer. You can't check on them, can't pause the act. You just have to trust they're coping. You move into the finale, producing the string of silks with a flourish. The audience loves it. They're applauding and cheering. You take a bow, signal your assistant to reappear from the box, and they climb out looking absolutely grey. Their legs give out the moment they're upright. They collapse against the box, and you have to grab them to stop them falling completely. The audience thinks it's part of the act. They're laughing and clapping. Your assistant is gasping for air, and you're half carrying them as you take your final bow. Backstage, they properly collapse. You lower them onto the floor where they lie flat on their back, taking huge, gulping breaths. Their face is the colour of old porridge. For a horrible moment, you think they might actually be seriously unwell. But slowly the colour starts to return. The breathing evens out. They open their eyes and croak that they're fine. They just need a minute. You're not convinced, but what can you do? There's no doctor coming to help a theatre performer who fainted backstage. You get them some of that dubious water, and they sip it slowly. The rest of the evening follows the same pattern as yesterday. Pack up the props, check the birds, wait for payment. Your assistant recovers enough to help with the packing, but they're moving slowly and wincing with every step. They've definitely pulled something. You can see them favouring their left side. When you ask, they admit the costume stays are digging into their ribs so badly they've left bruises. Deep purple marks all along their torso. They lift their shirt to show you, and you wince in sympathy. Those are going to take weeks to heal, and they'll just keep getting re-injured every time they perform. The theatre manager finally pays you. Same amount as yesterday. Barely enough to survive on. You split it with your assistant and they leave immediately, limping slightly. You pack up alone, your movements automatic. Strip off the costume, pull on the cold, damp street clothes, lock up the trunk, head out into the freezing night, walk home through the dark streets, climb the creaky stairs, collapse into your freezing room. The routine is already becoming monotonous, and you've only been doing it for 2 days. Tonight you're too tired to even attempt washing. You just strip down and fall into bed in your underwear. The cold is brutal, but exhaustion wins. You're asleep within minutes despite the usual chorus of coughs and snores and footsteps around you. Your dreams are fragmented and anxious. You're performing, but you've forgotten how to do the tricks. Your hands won't work. The cards keep falling. The audience is laughing at you. You wake up in the darkness with your heart racing, convinced for a moment that it was real. Then you remember you're in your room, and the performance is over, and you survived another night. The days blur together into an endless cycle of discomfort and exhaustion. Each morning you wake up feeling worse than the day before. Your body isn't recovering because you never get proper rest. The cold room, the thin blanket, the lumpy mattress, the flea bites, the constant noise from other residents, all conspire to keep you from sleeping properly. You're accumulating tiredness like debt, and eventually something will have to give. But for now, you keep pushing through because stopping means starving, and starving is not an option. Your voice is definitely going. By the third day of performances, you're hoarse. By the fourth day, you're croaking like a frog. By the fifth day, you can barely speak above a whisper. This is a serious problem because your act relies heavily on patter. You need to talk to the audience, to misdirect them, to build the sense of wonder. Without your voice, you're just a sweaty person in a smelly jacket doing hand movements. Your assistant tries to help by taking over some of the talking, but their voice isn't much better. Everyone in the theatre has the same chest problem. It's the smoky air and the cold and the general conditions. Victorian lungs are suffering lungs. You try gargling with salt water, an old performer's trick. The salt stings your raw throat and makes you cough, which hurts even more. You try honey, but honey costs money you don't have, so you only manage a tiny amount. It soothes for about 5 minutes before the scratchiness returns. You try just not talking during the day to save your voice for the evening shows. This makes life even more isolated and depressing. You and your assistant communicate in gestures and grunts. The silence is heavy with shared misery. The costume is becoming genuinely disgusting. After 5 days of performances without washing, it's reached a new level of foulness. The armpits are stiff with dried sweat. There are visible salt stains on the black wool where moisture has evaporated. The smell is eye-watering. When you put it on now, you actually gag. Your assistant's costume is in the same state. The fitting room backstage smells like the inside of a boot that's been worn for a week straight. You're both covered in rashes where the rough, sweat-soaked fabric rubs against skin. Red, angry patches on your neck, under your arms, around your waist where the tight waistband digs in. The constant sweating is causing other problems too. Your skin is breaking out in spots and bumps. Your face is dotted with angry red pustules that sting when you touch them. Your back is even worse, but you can't see it, so you try not to think about it. Your scalp itches constantly. You scratch at it and get flakes of dead skin under your fingernails. Everything itches. The flea bites itch. The rashes itch. Your dry, chapped skin itches. You're basically one giant itching human being, and scratching just makes it worse, but you can't stop yourself. Food is becoming an increasingly difficult issue. You're running out of money faster than you're earning it. The rent takes a huge chunk. You need to buy lamp oil and candles. You need to replace worn equipment. You need birdseed. What's left barely covers food for yourself. You're eating once a day if you're lucky, usually something cheap and not very nutritious. Bread and dripping, watery soup, sometimes just a potato. Your body is running on empty. You're constantly hungry, that gnawing ache in your belly that never goes away. You dream about food, proper hot meals with meat and vegetables and gravy, fresh bread with butter, fruit, cheese, things that are so far out of your price range, they might as well be made of gold. The hunger makes everything harder. You're weak and dizzy. Your concentration is shot. You drop things more often. You fumble tricks you could do in your sleep. During one performance, you actually forget what comes next in your routine. You stand there on stage in front of hundreds of people with your mind completely blank. Your assistant has to prompt you, breaking character to whisper the next trick. The audience notices. A few people laugh. You recover and keep going, but the humiliation burns. You're better than this. Or you used to be. Now you're just a tired, hungry person trying to remember how to do their job. Your assistant is struggling even more. They've lost weight. You can actually see it in their face. Their cheeks are hollow, their eyes have sunk back in their head. The costume hangs differently on them, looser in places it used to be tight. They're coughing constantly now, that wet, productive cough that sounds really bad. They keep performing though, because what choice do they have? Stop working and the money stops completely. At least this way, they're earning something, even if it's barely enough to survive on. One night your assistant doesn't make their cue. You finish a trick and turn to bring them on stage, and they're not there. You have to improvise, doing a different trick to fill time, while you frantically wonder what's happened. Eventually they appear in the wings, bent double and coughing so hard they can barely stand. You abandon that section of the act and move straight to the finale. The audience is restless and confused. You're sweating even more than usual from stress. The show ends badly. The applause is scattered and half-hearted. The theatre manager gives you both a talking to afterwards about professionalism. Your assistant tries to explain they were coughing too hard to move, but he doesn't want to hear it. The manager informs you that if the shows don't improve, you'll be replaced. There are dozens of other magicians who would love this slot. You're not special. You're not irreplaceable. Buck up or get out. He walks away and leaves you both standing there in your revolting costumes, feeling like you've been kicked. Your assistant looks like they're about to cry. You feel like joining them, but crying doesn't change anything. You still have to perform tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. That night, you lie in your freezing bed and seriously consider giving up. Just walking away from the whole thing. But in doing what? You have no other skills. You're not educated. You can't read or write well enough for clerical work. Manual labor would probably kill you in your current state. You're trapped in this profession through lack of alternatives. This is what people don't understand when they think of Victorian performers. It looks glamorous from the outside. The lights, the applause, the mystique of magic. But the reality is cold rooms and constant hunger and bodies breaking down from overwork and poor conditions. You eventually sleep and wake up to the same routine. Rent, cold clothes, painful walk, theatre, birds, costume, show. The routine is grinding you down to nothing. You're becoming an automaton, going through the motions without thought or feeling. Your hands do the tricks automatically. Your mouth says the words without your brain engaging. You're not really present anymore. You're just a collection of aching body parts operating a magic show. The worst thing is the hopelessness. There's no prospect of improvement. You're not going to suddenly get famous and land a better spot. You're not going to inherit money or get discovered by a wealthy patron. This is as good as it gets. This is your peak, and it's absolutely miserable. Every day is the same struggle. Every night is the same uncomfortable performance. Every week is the same scramble to make rent. It stretches ahead of you endlessly, years and years of this, until eventually your body gives out completely. During one show, you actually stumble on stage. Your legs just go weak and you nearly fall over. You catch yourself on the table and play it off as part of the act, but your heart is racing. That was close. If you'd fallen, it would have been humiliating. The audience would have laughed. The manager would have been furious. Your assistant gives you a concerned look from the wings, but you wave them off. You're fine. You're always fine. You have to be fine, because the alternative is being out of work and homeless. Your hands are in terrible condition. The constant manipulation of cards and coins and props has given you blisters on top of blisters. The skin on your fingertips is hard and calloused, but also cracked and painful. You've got a split on your index finger that won't heal because you keep using it and reopening the wound. It stings constantly, especially when you sweat. Which is always. The salt from your sweat gets into the crack and it burns. You've tried wrapping it, but that makes the tricks harder to perform. So you just live with the pain. Your feet are not much better. That first blister has healed and been replaced by new ones. You've got them on both heels now, plus one on your little toe from where the boot pinches. Walking is painful. Standing is painful. Everything involving feet is painful. By the end of each show, you're limping. You try to hide it during the performance, but once you're off stage, you can't keep up the pretense. You hobble to your spot backstage and sit down with relief. Taking off your boots at the end of the day is a special kind of torture. They've basically moulded to your feet, damp and warm and disgusting. Peeling them off feels like removing a layer of skin. The boarding house is developing new problems. There's a leak somewhere above your room, and water drips through the ceiling when it rains. You've got a bucket positioned to catch most of it, but the constant drip, drip, drip sound is maddening. It's like a clock ticking away the seconds of your miserable existence. The damp is making the walls bloom with mould, dark spots spreading across the plaster like a disease. The smell of mildew is added to all the other smells. Your blanket is getting damp. Sleeping under a damp blanket is like sleeping under a cold, wet towel. It's absolutely miserable, but you don't have another one. Your landlady is unsympathetic. When you mention the leak, she shrugs and says it'll be fixed when she gets around to it, which means never. The building is full of problems and she's not spending money to fix any of them. Why would she? Her tenants have nowhere else to go. You certainly don't. This room is all you can afford. You're lucky to have it, really. Some performers sleep rough or in doss houses where you rent a space on a communal floor. At least you have a door that locks. At least you have some privacy. These are the things you tell yourself to feel better. It doesn't really work. The hunger is becoming more than just uncomfortable. You're genuinely malnourished now. Your body is eating itself. You can see your ribs when you wash. Your hip bones stick out sharply. Your face is gaunt. You look ill. You probably are ill. Your immune system is shot from lack of food and sleep and constant stress. Every little bug that goes around the theatre, you catch it. You're always fighting off something. A cold, a cough, a sore throat, an upset stomach. Your body has no reserves to fight with. One morning you wake up and just lie there staring at the ceiling. You physically cannot make yourself get up. Every muscle in your body is screaming for rest. Your mind is foggy and slow. You're so tired you feel drunk. You know you need to get up. You need to get to the theatre. But you just can't. For the first time since you started this job, you miss a day. You send no word. You just don't show up. Your assistant probably manages alone, or maybe the theatre scrambles to find a replacement act. You don't know, and right now you don't care. You sleep for 16 hours straight. When you finally wake up, it's dark again. You've slept through the entire day. Your body feels marginally less terrible, but now you're gripped by panic. You've missed work. You've missed payment. The theatre manager is going to be furious. You might have lost your spot entirely. This could be the end of everything. You lie there in the darkness with your heart pounding, imagining the worst. No job means no money. No money means no room. No room means the street. The street means death, probably quite quickly. It's a short and brutal chain of consequences. The next morning, you drag yourself to the theatre expecting the worst. The manager is indeed furious. He tears into you about reliability and professionalism and respect for the establishment. You take it silently because what can you say? You are too tired and sick and starving to work. That's not an excuse he wants to hear. He finally runs out of steam and tells you you're on probation. One more incident, and you're out. No second chances. You nod and thank him for his generosity. It tastes like ashes in your mouth, but you do it. You need this job. Your assistant is sympathetic, but also annoyed. They had to cobble together a solo act last night, which went terribly. The audience was disappointed. The takings were down. The manager blamed your assistant for your absence. They're in trouble too now. You apologize, but it doesn't really help. The damage is done. There's a new tension between you. They're worried you're unreliable now, that you might disappear again and leave them stranded. You promise it won't happen again, but you're not sure you can keep that promise. Your body is reaching its limits. The shows continue. You're back on stage in the same revolting costume, doing the same tricks, sweating under the same lights. Everything hurts all the time now. It's not even specific pains anymore, just a general full-body ache that never lets up. Your joints feel like they're grinding bone on bone. Your muscles are permanently stiff and sore. You move like an old person despite being relatively young. This job is aging you rapidly. You're developing permanent lines on your face from stress and exhaustion. Your hair is starting to thin. Your teeth are loosening from poor nutrition. The audience has no idea. They see you on stage, and you're smiling and energetic and mysterious. They don't see the reality backstage. The costume that makes you want to retch, the hunger cramps, the cold sweats from exhaustion, the way your hands shake between tricks. The theatre is a machine that eats people and produces entertainment. You're being consumed by it, ground down into nothing. But as long as the show goes on, nobody cares. You start to understand why so many performers turn to drink. The theatre district is full of pubs where performers gather after shows. You've mostly avoided them because you can't afford to drink away your earnings. But you understand the temptation now, the temporary escape, the dulling of pain and worry, the brief sensation of warmth and well-being. You see other acts stumbling home drunk every night, and you used to judge them. Now you envy them. At least they've found a way to cope, even if it's destructive. Your assistant has started drinking. You can smell it on them during rehearsals. They're not drunk exactly, but they're maintaining a low level of alcohol in their system at all times. It makes them slower and less coordinated, but it also makes them care less about the discomfort. They don't complain as much about the costume anymore. They don't flinch when they fold themselves into the box. They're numbing themselves to get through it. You want to say something, but who are you to judge? They're surviving the only way they can. The winter is getting worse. It's properly freezing now. There's frost every morning that doesn't melt until nearly noon. Your room is so cold you can see your breath constantly. You sleep fully clothed under your damp blanket and still shiver all night. Your lips are cracked and bleeding from the cold and dryness. Your hands are covered in chilblains, painful red swellings that itch and burn. When you warm your hands up, the chilblains hurt even more, a deep throbbing ache that makes you want to cry. The theatre itself is brutally cold. Those pathetic coal braziers do essentially nothing when the temperature outside is below freezing. Everyone backstage huddles near them in shifts, trying to get a few minutes of warmth before they have to move away and let someone else have a turn. Your fingers are so numb you can barely manipulate your props. You try warming them over the brazier, but it's not enough. During rehearsal, you drop things constantly. Cards slip through your nerveless fingers. Coins clatter to the floor. Your assistant is in the same state. We're all just frozen people trying to do a job that requires manual dexterity. The doves are suffering too. They're fluffed up against the cold, looking miserable. One of them has stopped eating. You try to coax it with seed, but it just sits there with its eyes half closed. You recognize the signs. It's dying. There's nothing you can do. You can't afford a veterinarian, even if there was one who treated performing birds. You just have to watch it decline. 2 days later, you come in and find it dead at the bottom of its cage. The other doves have huddled away from it. You remove the small body and feel nothing. You're too exhausted and cold to spare emotion for a dead bird. You just need to figure out how to adjust your act without it. The audience numbers are dropping. It's so cold that fewer people are willing to venture out for entertainment. The theatre is half empty most nights now. This means less money for everyone. The manager is cutting costs. He's cut back on coal for heating. He's cut back on lamp oil so there are fewer lights backstage. He's hinting that he might need to cut some acts entirely. You're on thin ice already after your absence. Every show has to be perfect. You can't afford any mistakes. The pressure is immense. Your voice is essentially gone. You're performing entirely on whispers and exaggerated gestures now. It actually works reasonably well. The audience has to stay quiet to hear you, which means they pay closer attention. But it's exhausting. You're straining to make any sound at all. Your throat feels like raw meat. You're probably doing permanent damage to your vocal cords. But what choice do you have? Stop talking entirely, and the act doesn't work. Keep talking, and you're shredding your throat. Lose-lose situation. During one show, disaster strikes. You're in the middle of the coin trick, making a coin disappear and reappear in increasingly unlikely places. The audience is actually engaged, actually quiet and watching. You're doing well. Then you reach up to produce the coin from behind someone's ear, a classic move, and your shoulder just gives out. Something tears. The pain is instant and electric, shooting down your arm and up your neck. You gasp and drop character completely. The coin falls. Your arm hangs useless at your side. The audience murmurs in confusion. Your assistant sees something is very wrong. They rush on stage earlier than planned and take over, improvising patter while you stand there clutching your shoulder. You're trying to smile, but it probably looks more like a grimace. You manage to back off stage while your assistant does an extended version of one of their bits. The moment you're out of sight, you collapse. The pain is unbelievable. Your shoulder feels like it's on fire. You can't lift your arm at all. Every tiny movement sends fresh waves of agony through your body. The stage manager finds you and panics. You're supposed to go back on for the finale. You can barely stand. She wants to know if you can finish the show. You have no idea. You struggle back to your feet using your good arm. Your assistant wraps up their improvised section, and you somehow stagger back on stage. The finale only requires one hand for the silk production. You manage it, using only your right arm, keeping your left pinned to your side. The audience can tell something is wrong. The applause is sympathetic rather than enthusiastic. You take an awkward one-armed bow and get off stage as fast as possible. Backstage, the manager is furious. Another incident. That's two now. You try to explain that your shoulder is seriously injured, but he doesn't care. He wants reliable performers. You're clearly not reliable. He'll give you a few days to recover, but if you can't perform properly when you come back, you're done. Your assistant has to help you out of your costume because you can't lift your arm to remove it. Even the gentle tugging sends pain shooting through your shoulder. You're trying not to cry, but tears are leaking out anyway. This is bad. Really bad. You can't afford medical care. A doctor costs money you absolutely don't have. You're going to have to treat this yourself and hope it heals. Your assistant helps you home, supporting you through the icy streets. You're shaking from pain and shock and cold. Every step jars your shoulder. By the time you reach your boarding house, you're nearly delirious. Your assistant gets you up the stairs and into your room, helps you onto the bed and leaves you there. They have their own problems. They can't nursemaid you. You lie in the darkness and try to assess the damage. You can't lift your arm at all. When you try, nothing happens except pain. Your shoulder feels wrong, misaligned somehow. You might have torn something inside, a muscle or a tendon or something worse. Without medical knowledge, you have no way to know. All you know is it hurts worse than anything you've experienced before, worse than the blisters, worse than the bruises, worse than the constant aches. This is sharp and specific and overwhelming. Sleep is impossible. You can't find a position that doesn't hurt. Lying on your left side is agony. Lying on your back makes your shoulder throb. Lying on your right side is slightly better, but still painful. You doze fitfully, waking every time you accidentally move the wrong way. The night stretches on forever. You listen to the familiar sounds of the boarding house, coughs, snores, footsteps, the drip of water into your bucket. Your whole world has contracted to this dark, cold room and this overwhelming pain. Morning comes and you can't get up. You literally cannot make your body move. The pain is too much. You lie there staring at the ceiling and realize you might be finished. If your shoulder doesn't heal properly, you can't perform. If you can't perform, you have no income. If you have no income, you end up on the street. It's the same brutal chain of consequences you imagined before. This might be the injury that ends everything. Victorian magicians don't get workers' compensation or disability payments. You're just out of luck. Your landlady hammers on the door for rent. You croak that you'll have it soon. She says you better, or you're out. You've got 3 days. After that, your belongings go on the street and someone else gets the room. There's always someone else desperate for even this miserable space. You're completely replaceable. The thought sits heavy on your chest, adding psychological weight to the physical pain. Nobody would miss you. Nobody would care. You'd just be another failed performer who disappeared into the Victorian masses. You force yourself up eventually because lying there won't solve anything. The movement nearly makes you black out from pain. You breathe through it, willing yourself not to faint. You need to try to work. You need to earn something, or you're done. You dress one-handed, which takes forever. Your shirt goes on wrong and you can't fix it. Your jacket hangs awkwardly. Your boots are a nightmare. You can't bend properly to lace them. You just shove your feet in and leave them loose. The walk to the theatre is a special kind of torture. Every step jolts your shoulder. You're sweating despite the freezing cold. A cold, clammy sweat that has nothing to do with heat. You decide to try performing anyway, because the alternative is immediate homelessness. Your assistant rigs up a makeshift sling using a strip of old curtain fabric. It's rough against your neck and doesn't really support your arm properly, but it keeps it immobile, which reduces the pain slightly. You'll have to modify the act on the fly, doing only tricks that work one-handed. Most of your best material is now impossible. The coin manipulations require both hands. The card fans need 2 hands to spread properly. Even pulling a rabbit from a hat is tricky when you can't hold the hat steady. You spend the afternoon working out what you can actually do. Turns out it's not much. You can produce silks from your good hand if your assistant loads them into your pocket beforehand. You can do some basic misdirection and patter, though your ruined voice makes that difficult. Your assistant will have to carry most of the act. The vanishing box routine can still work since your assistant does the physical part anyway. It's going to be a stripped down, barely functional show. You're praying the audience is drunk enough not to notice how bad it is. The costume situation is now critical. You can't get your injured arm through the sleeve properly. Your assistant has to cut the seam and rig it with pins so it looks intact from the front, but can be put on without lifting your arm. The modification is obvious up close, but hopefully the stage lights and distance will hide it. The jacket hangs wrong now, sagging on your injured side. You look lopsided and strange. Your assistant tries to adjust it, but there's only so much they can do. You look like what you are, an injured person trying to pretend they're fine. Getting through the pre-show routine is harder than usual. The doves still need tending. You can't clean their cages one-handed, so your assistant has to do it while you stand there uselessly. The smell seems worse today, probably because you're more aware of every small misery. Your head is pounding from pain and stress. Your stomach is cramping from hunger and anxiety. You're so tense your good shoulder is now starting to ache too. Your whole body is locked up tight, braced against the pain. The theatre is only about a third full tonight. The cold has kept people home. Those who did come look miserable, huddled in their coats and not particularly enthusiastic. This is possibly the worst audience you could ask for. They're cold and grumpy and want their money's worth. They're not going to be forgiving of a subpar act. The manager gives you a warning look before the show starts. Make it good, or don't bother coming back tomorrow. The threat hangs over you like a blade. Your slot arrives too soon. You walk on stage and immediately feel wrong. The sling is visible under your jacket, a bulge that looks odd. Your arm is pinned at an unnatural angle. You're standing crooked, favouring your good side. The audience notices immediately. There's murmuring. Someone shouts asking if you're injured. You try to laugh it off, make a joke about a trick gone wrong in rehearsal. Your whisper voice barely carries to the back rows. This is already going badly. You launch into your opening trick and fumble it immediately. The silk snags on your pocket and comes out in a wadded mess instead of a graceful flow. The audience isn't impressed. A few people laugh, not with delight, but with derision. You push on, doing the next trick. It goes slightly better. Your assistant joins you and takes over the patter, their voice stronger than yours. They're trying to save the act, but they're fighting a losing battle. The audience is restless and bored. The vanishing box routine is your only hope. It's always been your strongest trick. Your assistant climbs in, and you go through the motions with your one good arm. The movements are awkward. You're struggling to close the panels smoothly. Everything takes twice as long as it should. The audience is getting impatient. Someone yells for you to hurry up. Someone else suggests you quit and let the next act on. Your face is burning with humiliation under the stage lights. Sweat is running down your back despite the cold theatre. You finally get the panels closed and do your big reveal. The box is empty. The audience gives scattered, unenthusiastic applause. A few people are already getting up to leave. You're dying up here. You move to the next part where your assistant reappears, but something has gone wrong with the mechanism. The panel that should open smoothly is stuck. You tug at it one-handed and it won't budge. The audience is now openly laughing at you. Someone throws something. It hits the stage near your feet with a wet splat. Something rotten. A vegetable, maybe. Panic is setting in properly now. Your assistant is trapped in the box and you can't get them out. You're pulling at the panel with increasing desperation. Your injured shoulder is screaming at you. You're using muscles you shouldn't be, and something grinds painfully inside the joint. The stage manager is watching from the wings with a furious expression. The manager himself has appeared, his face thunderous. This is a complete disaster. Finally, the panel gives way with a crack of breaking wood. Your assistant tumbles out looking confused and frightened. You try to salvage something by moving into your closing tricks, but the audience has turned. They're booing now. More objects are being thrown. You're being pelted with various bits of rubbish. Something hits your bad shoulder and you cry out in genuine pain. That gets a laugh from the crowd. They think it's part of the act. Your assistant grabs your good arm and pulls you off stage. You go willingly, grateful to escape. Behind you, the master of ceremonies is shouting for calm and announcing the next act early. Backstage is chaos. The manager is right there waiting for you. He doesn't even let you catch your breath. You're fired. Both of you. He wants you out of the building immediately. Don't come back. Don't ask for references. You're done. He's already lost money tonight because people are demanding refunds after your shambles of a performance. You try to apologize, but he's not interested. He points at the exit and tells you to get out before he has you thrown out. You and your assistant gather your things in numb silence. Your props go into the battered trunk. The doves go into their cages. Your street clothes are pulled on over the modified costume because you can't manage changing properly. Everything is thrown together hastily while other performers watch. Some look sympathetic. Most look relieved it's not them. This is the life. One bad show and you're out. There's always someone else waiting to take your place. You're utterly replaceable. The walk out of the theatre is a walk of shame. You're carrying what you can manage one-handed, while your assistant struggles with the rest. The trunk is too heavy for one person, but together you drag it through the backstage area and out into the alley. The cold night air hits you like a slap. It started snowing, light flakes drifting down through the darkness. Your breath clouds in front of your face. You stand there in the alley surrounded by your belongings and face the reality of your situation. No job, no income. 3 days until you're evicted. An injured shoulder that shows no sign of healing. Your assistant is already talking about trying to find work elsewhere. Maybe a different theatre across town. Maybe a music hall that's less prestigious. Maybe street performing, though that pays almost nothing. And in this weather, it would be brutal. They're trying to make plans, trying to stay practical. You're barely listening. You're watching the snow fall and thinking about how soft and quiet it is, how peaceful. For just a moment, you're not thinking about pain or hunger or fear, just watching the snow. Getting the trunk up 3 flights of stairs is nearly impossible. You manage the first flight by sitting on each step and pulling the trunk up 1 step at a time. Your good arm is shaking with effort. By the second flight, you're gasping for breath and seeing spots in your vision. The pain in your shoulder has spread across your entire upper body. Your back is spasming. Your neck feels locked. You have to rest for several minutes on the landing before attempting the 3rd flight. Someone passes you on the stairs and steps over your trunk without comment. Just another struggling tenant in a building full of them. The 3rd flight defeats you halfway up. You physically cannot pull the trunk any higher. Your arm has given out completely. You're sitting on the stairs in the dim light from a guttering candle in a wall sconce, surrounded by failure. Your trunk sits below you, too heavy to move. Your room is above you, too far to reach. You're stuck in between, unable to go forward or back. For a wild moment you consider just leaving the trunk there and crawling to your room empty-handed. But the trunk contains everything you need for performing. Without it you have no act at all. Eventually another tenant comes down the stairs. It's the man from the room next to yours, a wiry fellow who works at the docks. You've never spoken to him beyond brief nods. He takes in the situation immediately. Without being asked, he grabs one handle of the trunk while you grab the other, and together you haul it up the remaining steps. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't offer sympathy, just helps, and then disappears into his room. You're left standing outside your door, breathing hard and feeling pathetically grateful for that small moment of human kindness. Inside your room, the bucket has overflowed. The leak has gotten worse, and water has spread across part of the floor. Your blanket is soaked where it draped off the bed. The whole place smells of damp and mildew even more strongly than before. You're too tired to care. You shove the trunk against the wall, strip off your wet boots, and collapse onto the bed in your clothes. Your shoulder is throbbing in time with your heartbeat. Each pulse sends a wave of pain through your arm and neck. You lie there in the darkness, listening to the drip of water into the overflowing bucket, and wonder how everything went wrong so quickly. Sleep comes in fits and starts. You keep waking up from dreams where you're performing and everything is going wrong. The audience is laughing at you. Objects are being thrown. You're trying to do tricks, but your hands don't work. Your props keep breaking. The dreams are so vivid that waking up is almost a relief until you remember that reality is barely better. You're jobless, injured, and running out of time before you're homeless too. The darkness presses down on you, thick and suffocating. Morning arrives, grey and cold. The snow has stopped, but the temperature has dropped further. Your room is freezing. The water on the floor has started to ice over around the edges. Your breath fogs thickly. You're shivering so hard your teeth are chattering. Getting up feels impossible, but you force yourself to do it. You need to find work. Today, right now. Every hour you waste is an hour closer to eviction. Your landlady won't give you extra time out of kindness. She's already got a list of people wanting rooms. You dress as warmly as you can with your limited wardrobe. Every piece of clothing you own goes on in layers. It's not enough. The cold still penetrates through to your skin. Your injured shoulder makes dressing a slow and painful process. You can barely lift your arm at all today. The overnight rest hasn't helped. If anything, it's stiffer and more painful than yesterday. You fashion a better sling from a torn sheet, something that actually supports the weight of your arm. It helps slightly, but not enough. Breakfast isn't happening. You've got no food in the room and no money to buy any. Your stomach is cramping with hunger, but you ignore it. You've gotten good at ignoring physical discomfort. You're a walking collection of ignored pains. The hunger, the cold, the throbbing shoulder, the blisters on your feet, the chilblains on your hands, the headache from stress and poor sleep. You ignore all of it and head out to find work. The streets are treacherous with ice. The snow has been packed down by foot traffic and frozen solid. Your worn boots slip with every step. You're moving slowly, carefully, trying not to fall. Other people are doing the same. Everyone is hunched against the cold, wrapped in whatever they could find. The morning traffic is lighter than usual. Sensible people are staying inside if they can. You don't have that luxury. You need work or you're finished. Your first stop is the theatre where you worked. Maybe the manager has calmed down. Maybe he'll give you another chance. Maybe you can grovel enough to get back in his good graces. You know it's unlikely, but you have to try. The theatre looks different in daylight, smaller and shabbier. The paint is peeling. The posters outside are water-damaged and torn. You go around to the stage door and knock. The stage manager answers, and her face hardens when she sees you. She says the manager doesn't want to see you. You're not welcome here. She closes the door in your face before you can argue. You try 2 more theatres in the area. Both have heard about your disastrous performance. Word travels fast in the entertainment community. No one wants to hire someone who got pelted with rubbish and broke their equipment on stage. You're damaged goods, unreliable. One manager laughs in your face when you ask for work. He says he wouldn't book you if you paid him. The humiliation burns, but you keep trying. What else can you do? By midday, you've exhausted all the theatres you know. None are hiring. Several have acts they're about to let go because business is slow in the winter. They certainly don't need another mediocre magician with one working arm. You try the music halls next. These are rougher venues with tougher audiences, but they pay. Not much, but something. The first 3 aren't interested. The 4th actually considers it. The manager looks you over and asks what happened to your arm. You lie and say it's nearly healed, you'll be fine in a few days. He doesn't believe you, but he's desperate. His regular acts aren't drawing crowds. He offers you a trial. 1 show tonight. If you do well and the audience likes you, he'll give you a week's booking. If you bomb, you're out and you don't get paid for the trial show. It's a terrible deal, but you're in no position to negotiate. You accept immediately. He tells you to be back by 7 o'clock and not to be drunk. You assure him you'll be sober and professional. He looks skeptical but nods. You leave before he can change his mind. Now you have several hours to kill and nothing to do with them. You can't go back to your room because it's too cold to sit there doing nothing. You need to stay moving to generate body heat. You wander the streets aimlessly, keeping to areas where there are other people. Safety in numbers. The cold is relentless. Your face is numb. Your fingers are numb despite being shoved deep in your pockets. Your toes have lost all feeling. You're just stumbling blocks of frozen meat at the ends of your legs. You find yourself outside a chop house. The smell of cooking food drifts out every time the door opens. It's torture. Your stomach is growling so loudly it's almost embarrassing. You haven't eaten in over a day. You're genuinely hungry now, the kind of hunger that makes you feel weak and dizzy. You pat your pockets and find a few pennies. Not enough for a real meal. Maybe enough for a cup of tea and a bread roll. You go inside and the warmth hits you like a wall. The music hall is even rougher than you expected. It's in a cellar, down a flight of stairs that are slippery with ice and suspicious moisture. The entrance is marked by a battered sign and a doorman who looks like he's broken several noses, possibly his own more than once. You tell him you're performing tonight, and he jerks his thumb toward the door without interest. Inside, the air is thick with pipe smoke and the smell of spilt beer. The ceiling is low and the lighting is poor. This is several steps down from your previous theatre, which was already pretty grim. The stage is tiny, barely a raised platform at one end of the room. There's no curtain, no wings to hide in, no proper backstage area. Just a cramped corner where performers wait their turn, separated from the audience by a thin partition. You can hear everything happening in the main room. Loud conversations, arguments, someone singing badly, glasses clinking, chairs scraping. This audience is going to be brutal. They're here to drink, not to watch acts. Entertainment is secondary to alcohol consumption. The manager finds you and reminds you that this is a trial. If the audience hates you, you stop immediately and leave. He's not having another night of people demanding refunds. You nod and try to look confident. Inside, you're terrified. You've got minimal material that works one-handed. Your voice is still shot. Your shoulder is agony. You're exhausted and hungry and cold. You're in no state to perform, but you have to. There's no choice. The first act is a singer with a surprisingly good voice. The audience mostly ignores her. They keep talking and drinking. She soldiers through her songs and finishes to scattered applause. She brushes past you looking defeated. "Welcome to the music hall circuit," her expression says. The next act is a comedian whose material is crude even by Victorian standards. The audience loves him. They're roaring with laughter and shouting encouragement. He finishes to genuine applause and stumbles off stage, looking pleased with himself and probably drunk. Then it's your turn. You step onto the platform and the noise level doesn't change. People are still talking. No one is paying attention. You don't even have a proper introduction. You just start performing and hope someone notices. You launch into your opening trick, producing a silk from your hand. A few people near the front glance up. Most ignore you. You push on, doing another trick. Your whisper voice can barely be heard over the din. You're basically miming the act, letting the visual elements speak for themselves. Gradually, you start to capture some attention. A table near the stage actually stops talking to watch. Then another. You're getting through to them, slowly. You do the trick where you produce an endless stream of silks from your pocket. It gets some appreciative murmurs. You follow it with coins appearing and disappearing. Your one good hand is working overtime, moving smoothly through the practiced motions. The muscle memory is carrying you. You're not even thinking, just performing on autopilot while your conscious mind deals with the pain. Then disaster strikes again. You're reaching into your jacket to palm another coin and your shoulder just gives out completely. The pain is blinding. You gasp and your arm drops to your side. The coin you were palming falls to the floor with a clear metallic clink. Everyone sees it. The illusion is shattered. Someone laughs. Someone else shouts that you're a fraud. The mood turns instantly. You're losing them. They're going back to their conversations and drinks. You've got seconds to save this. You make a split-second decision. You drop the magician character entirely and hold up your good hand for attention. In your rasping whisper voice, you tell them the truth. You're injured. You got fired yesterday. You're trying to work through it because you need money for rent. You're not asking for sympathy, just patience. It's a gamble. Victorian audiences can be cruel to anyone showing weakness. But sometimes, just sometimes, honesty works better than pretense. The room goes quiet. People are actually listening. You've surprised them by breaking character. You continue with your act, but you acknowledge the limitations. When you drop something, you make a joke about it. When a trick goes wrong, you admit it. You're turning your disaster into a different kind of entertainment. Not polished magic, but genuine struggle. The audience starts rooting for you instead of against you. They want to see you succeed despite the obstacles. Your makeshift act limps to a conclusion. You finish with a simple trick that actually works properly, producing a flower from your empty hand. It's not spectacular, but in context, it feels triumphant. The audience applauds. Real applause, not scattered pity claps. They're acknowledging effort rather than skill. You take an awkward bow and step off the platform. Your heart is pounding, your shoulder is screaming, but you did it. You got through the show without being pelted or booed off stage. The manager catches you in the corner. He looks thoughtful rather than angry. He says that wasn't what he expected, but it worked somehow. The audience liked you. Not for your magic, which was frankly terrible, but for your honesty. He offers you 3 nights of work, not a full week, but 3 nights. The pay is minimal. Pennies, really. But it's something. You accept immediately. 3 nights means 3 days of income. It might be enough to scrape together rent and buy some food. Maybe. You leave the music hall feeling strange, not quite hopeful, but less completely desperate. The cold hits you as you emerge onto the street. It's properly night now, dark and freezing. The walk home is miserable but familiar. You know these streets well now. Every treacherous patch of ice, every pile of frozen muck, every corner where the wind hits especially hard. Your shoulder is throbbing, but you made it through a performance. That's something. That's not nothing. Back in your freezing room, you assess your situation. 3 nights of work at terrible pay. Rent due in 2 days. Not enough money. You need to find more work during the daytime. Or sell something. You look around your room at your meager possessions. There's nothing worth selling except your props. And without props, you can't perform at all. You're trapped in a vicious circle. You need equipment to work, but you need money to keep equipment and shelter. Sleep doesn't come easily. Your mind is spinning through possibilities. Could you borrow money? From whom? You have no friends here, no family, no connections. Everyone you know is as poor as you are. Could you steal? The thought crosses your mind and you're ashamed of it, but desperation makes you consider things you never would otherwise. Victorian prisons are full of people who stole because they were starving. You push the thought away. Not yet. You haven't fallen that far yet. The night passes slowly. You drift in and out of consciousness, never fully asleep, never fully awake. The pain in your shoulder keeps pulling you back to awareness. The cold seeps into your bones. The damp blanket provides almost no warmth. You lie there shivering and thinking about how quickly everything collapsed. A few weeks ago you had a job, a room, a future. Now you're one bad day away from complete destitution. The Victorian world doesn't have safety nets. There's no unemployment benefit, no social housing, no medical care for the poor. You're on your own. Morning brings your landlady hammering on the door. Rent is due tomorrow. She wants to make sure you haven't forgotten, as if you could forget. You tell her through the door that you'll have it tomorrow. She says it better be all of it, not partial payment. All of it, or you're out. You hear her heavy footsteps moving on to the next room to harass the next tenant. Everyone in this building is one payment away from eviction. You're all dancing on the edge of disaster. You end up at a pawn shop staring through the grimy window at the items inside. Watches, jewellery, tools, clothing, musical instruments, all the desperate offerings of people who needed money more than possessions. You could pawn something, your coat maybe, though you'd freeze without it. Your boots, though you'd need to walk home barefoot through the ice. Nothing you own has any real value. The pawnbroker would offer pennies for items that represent your entire worldly wealth. It's a losing proposition, but you're running out of options. Inside the shop, the air is musty and close. Every surface is crammed with goods. The pawnbroker is a thin man with suspicious eyes. He looks you over and clearly decides you're not worth his best customer service. You ask what he'd give you for your coat. He fingers the fabric and wrinkles his nose at the smell. "Tuppence," he says. 2 pennies for a coat that cost you months of savings when you bought it. You're insulted, but what did you expect? Everything loses value when you're desperate to sell it. You leave the coat on and leave the shop. You'll find another way. The afternoon is disappearing. You need to get back to the music hall soon for tonight's performance. But first you try one more thing. Street performing. It's technically illegal without a license, but people do it anyway. If you can earn even a few pennies, it would help. You find a busy corner and start performing simple tricks. Cards, coins, basic sleight of hand. People hurry past without looking. It's too cold for anyone to stop and watch street entertainment. Those who do glance at you see your sling and your shabby clothes and probably assume you're begging. A few people throw pennies at your feet, charity rather than payment for entertainment. After an hour, you've collected maybe 6 pennies. Your hands are so cold you can barely manipulate the cards. Your shoulder is throbbing from even the limited movement. A constable appears at the end of the street, and you quickly gather your things and move on. Getting arrested would be the final disaster. You pocket your meagre earnings and head toward the music hall. At least there you'll be inside and marginally warmer. The music hall is busier tonight. Word has spread somehow about the honest magician who admitted his failures. People are curious. The manager seems pleased and tells you you're on earlier tonight, 2nd instead of 3rd. More people will see you. You're not sure if this is good or bad. More people means more chance of earning tips, but also more people to disappoint if your act falls apart. You wait in the corner watching the first act, a juggler who's actually quite skilled. The audience is engaged tonight, watching and applauding. They're in a good mood. You need to maintain that. Your turn comes and you step onto the platform. The talking quiets down more quickly than last night. People are actually ready to watch. You give them the same honest introduction. Injured magician, doing his best. Please bear with me. It works again. The audience is on your side from the start. You move through your limited material, keeping up a patter of self-deprecating comments. When tricks go right, you act surprised. When they go wrong, you make jokes. It's not traditional magic, but it's entertainment of a sort. Midway through your act, something unexpected happens. Someone in the audience heckles you, but in a good-natured way. They shout, asking how you injured yourself. Instead of ignoring it, you respond, turning it into part of the show. You tell an exaggerated story about a trick gone wrong, making it funnier than the grim reality. Other audience members join in, shouting questions and comments. It becomes interactive. You're basically doing comedy rather than magic at this point, but it's working. The performance ends with genuine applause, and, miraculously, people throw coins onto the platform. Not many, but some. You gather them quickly before anyone can change their mind. Added to your performance fee, it might be enough. Just barely enough. You count it in the corner afterward and feel a wave of relief. You can make rent tomorrow. You'll have nothing left over, literally nothing, but you can keep your room for another week. The next 2 nights follow the same pattern. You perform. The audience enjoys the novelty of your honest struggling. Coins are thrown. You collect just enough to survive. By the 3rd night, your shoulder is slightly better. The rest has helped marginally. You can lift your arm a tiny bit without blinding pain. It's still bad, but it's not getting worse. That's something. You start to believe you might actually recover enough to perform properly again someday. But on the 3rd night, the night you're hoping to negotiate an extension of your booking, everything changes. You're waiting in the corner when you hear a commotion in the main room. Raised voices, the sound of furniture scraping, then shouting. A fight has broken out. This happens occasionally in rough establishments. Usually it's dealt with quickly, but this time it escalates. You hear glass breaking, more shouting, the heavy sound of bodies hitting the floor. The doorman rushes past you heading into the fray. Other performers are backing away from the partition. Through a gap you can see chaos, tables overturned, men grappling with each other. The manager trying to restore order and being shoved aside. It's a full brawl now. Someone crashes into the platform hard enough to crack the wood. Another person is thrown against the partition and it wobbles dangerously. This is bad, really bad. The fight spills toward your corner. You press back against the wall, but there's nowhere to go. A large man stumbles backward and slams into you. The impact hits your injured shoulder directly. The pain is instantaneous and overwhelming. White light flashes behind your eyes. You hear yourself cry out. The man doesn't even notice. He's turning to rejoin the fight. You slide down the wall, clutching your shoulder, unable to stand. The pain is worse than anything yet. Something has gone wrong inside the joint. You can feel it. Something has torn or broken or dislocated. The manager is shouting for everyone to get out. The fight is too big to control. He's closing the hall for the night before the constables arrive. Performers are scrambling to leave. People are pushing past you. You're still on the floor, trying to breathe through the pain. Someone grabs your good arm and hauls you upright. It's the juggler from earlier. He gets you moving toward the exit. You're stumbling, barely able to walk. Each step jolts your shoulder and sends fresh waves of agony through your body. Outside in the freezing street, the crowd disperses quickly. No one wants to be around when the police arrive. You're leaning against a wall, trying not to pass out. Your shoulder feels completely wrong, loose, unstable. When you try to move your arm, it doesn't respond properly. The juggler asks if you're all right. You're very clearly not all right, but you nod anyway. He looks doubtful, but he's not staying around either. He disappears into the night and you're alone. The walk home is a nightmare. You're cradling your arm against your body and moving slowly. The pain is making you nauseous. You have to stop several times to let waves of dizziness pass. The streets are empty and dark. If someone wanted to rob you now, you'd be helpless. But you have nothing worth stealing anyway. You're just another broken person struggling through the Victorian night. There are thousands like you. You're completely unremarkable in your misery. You make it to your building eventually. The stairs are impossible. You crawl up them on your hands and knees, dragging yourself up one step at a time. It takes forever. By the time you reach your door, you're shaking and sweating despite the cold. Inside your room, you collapse onto the bed without even removing your boots. The pain is so intense you can't think. You lie there in the darkness, making small wounded noises. There's no help coming, no one to ease the pain. You're alone with your broken body in a freezing room in a city that doesn't care if you live or die. You spend the day lying in bed because moving is too painful, and there's nowhere to go anyway. The leak in your ceiling drips steadily into the bucket. The sound is hypnotic in its monotony. You watch the grey light move across your wall as the day passes. You're aware that you should be doing something, looking for work or help or food, but you cannot make your body move. The pain and exhaustion have finally won. You're completely defeated. Hunger becomes acute as the day wears on. Your stomach has given up growling and moved into a constant cramping ache. You feel hollow, scraped out, empty. You've gone days without proper food before, but never while also dealing with this level of injury and pain. Your body has nothing left to give. You're running on fumes. At some point you drift into a doze that's more like fainting. When you wake, it's dark again. You've lost an entire day to pain and exhaustion. The building around you carries on with its usual sounds. Footsteps, coughs, arguments, crying. So many people living on top of each other, each dealing with their own version of misery. You hear your neighbour coughing through the thin wall. The same wet, rattling cough that everyone has. You hear someone upstairs shouting, a baby crying somewhere. The building is full of suffering and no one has the energy to care about anyone else. You're all just trying to survive. Another morning. Your landlady's knock is expected but still dreaded. Rent day again. A week has passed somehow. You can't answer the door. You literally don't have the strength to stand. She hammers harder and shouts through the wood. You try to call out that you need more time, but your voice is barely a whisper. She can't hear you. She keeps hammering and shouting. Finally she leaves, but you know she'll be back. Probably with the constable or someone large to throw you out. It's just a matter of time now. You lie there contemplating your options. You could try to crawl to a hospital. The free hospitals take charity cases, people with no money. But you've heard stories about those places. Overcrowded, understaffed, infections spreading through the wards. People go in sick and come out dead. It might be worse than staying here. At least here you're alone with your misery. There you'd be surrounded by it, drowning in the collective suffering of the poor and injured. The day passes in a blur. At some point your neighbour knocks on your door. The dock worker who helped you with your trunk. You try to answer but can't get up. He opens the door, which you forgot to lock, and finds you on the bed. His expression shifts from concern to resignation. He's seen this before. People collapsing from injury or sickness, or just the grinding exhaustion of poverty. He asks if you've eaten. You shake your head. He disappears and returns with a chunk of bread and some weak tea. He helps you sit up enough to eat and drink. The bread is hard to swallow. Your throat is dry and sore. But you manage it. He doesn't ask questions, doesn't offer false comfort. Just helps you lie back down and leaves the door slightly ajar. Maybe so someone will hear if you call for help. Maybe just because the lock is broken anyway. You're grateful for the food and the small kindness. It doesn't solve anything, but it helps you survive another few hours. In the Victorian world, that's all you can ask for. Hour by hour survival. Your mind starts to wander as fever sets in. The swelling in your shoulder is worse. You can feel heat radiating from the joint, even through layers of clothing. Infection is taking hold. Your body is fighting it, but without proper care, without medicine, without adequate food, it's losing the battle. You drift through memories and strange fever dreams. You see yourself performing in grand theatres for enthusiastic crowds. You're healthy and successful, dressed in fine clothes that don't smell, eating proper meals. Then the dream shifts and you're back in reality, lying in a freezing room, broken and alone. Time becomes meaningless. You're not sure if hours or days have passed. The light changes in your window. Sometimes it's grey, sometimes darker. The dripping continues. Voices come and go in the building. At one point, your landlady returns with someone. They open your door and stand there discussing you like you're already dead. One says to throw you out now. The other says to wait a day or two, see if you die first, save the trouble of moving you. They leave without speaking to you directly. You're just a problem to be solved, not a person anymore. More time passes. You're very hot now, then very cold, then hot again. The fever is spiking. Your clothes are soaked with sweat even though the room is freezing. You're shivering so hard your teeth chatter. Someone brings water at some point. You drink it desperately. It helps for a moment, then the terrible thirst returns. Your lips are cracked and bleeding. Your tongue feels thick and dry in your mouth. Everything hurts, but in a distant way now. The pain has become so constant you're almost numb to it. You think about your life with surprising clarity between the fever spells. You are never going to succeed as a Victorian magician. The system isn't designed for success. It's designed to extract labour from desperate people and discard them when they break down. You've seen it happen to other performers. The singers who lose their voices, the acrobats who break bones, the dancers who ruin their feet. Everyone is disposable. There's always someone else desperate enough to take their place. You're just another casualty of a brutal economic system that values profit over people. The fever breaks eventually, or maybe you just get used to it. You wake up clearer-headed than you've been in days. Your shoulder is still bad, but the acute crisis seems to have passed. You're not dead yet. That's something. You still can't get up, but at least your mind is working again. You can think about what comes next, which is probably being thrown out of this room and onto the street. Then what? The workhouse, maybe. The last resort for people with nowhere else to go. You've heard terrible things about workhouses. Families separated, harsh labour, barely enough food to survive. But it's shelter of a sort. Your neighbour appears again. He's brought more food and water. He tells you your landlady is giving you until tomorrow, then you're out. He's sorry, but there's nothing he can do. He can't take you in. He's barely managing himself. You understand. You're not his responsibility. No one is responsible for you except yourself, and you've failed spectacularly. He helps you sit up and eat slowly. The food stays down this time. Your body is remembering how to function. Not well, but enough to cling to life a bit longer. After he leaves, you take stock of your situation with brutal honesty. You cannot perform. You cannot do physical labour. You have no money and no prospects. Your belongings are worthless. You're injured and weak and one day away from homelessness. In the Victorian world, there's no safety net to catch you. There's no disability payment, no social support, no charity that can solve your problems. There are only bad options and worse options. The workhouse is looking like your only choice. The thought of the workhouse fills you with dread. But what else is there? You could try to go home if you have a home to go back to. But you probably burned those bridges when you left to pursue performing. Or maybe there was no home to begin with. Maybe you came to the city because there was nothing for you wherever you started. So many Victorian migrants are fleeing rural poverty or family situations, or just the crushing boredom of small-town life. They come to the city expecting opportunity and find only different types of suffering. The final night in your room is long and cold. You've gathered your few belongings into a pile. The costume that started all this trouble, now stiff with dried sweat and stinking to high heaven. Your props in their battered trunk, a few items of clothing. Nothing of real value, but it's all you have. You'll have to abandon most of it. The workhouse won't let you bring a trunk full of magician equipment. They'll assign you whatever work they think you're capable of and expect obedience in return for basic shelter and food. Your performing days are over. You try to sleep, but your mind won't settle. Memories keep surfacing. The first time you performed and felt the thrill of audience applause. That brief period when you thought you might actually make it as a magician. The slow grinding realization that the job was destroying you. The injuries accumulating, the hunger becoming constant, the cold seeping into your bones. How quickly it all fell apart. From hopeful performer to broken invalid in a matter of weeks. Victorian life is brutal in its efficiency at crushing people. Morning arrives grey and grim. Your landlady doesn't even bother knocking. She arrives with 2 large men and opens your door with a spare key. Time's up. They need the room. You're already dressed in your filthy clothes, your good arm through one sleeve, the other side draped over your injured shoulder. You've got a small bundle of possessions you can carry. Everything else stays. Your landlady's men immediately start going through your abandoned belongings, assessing what can be sold. The trunk might fetch something. The costume is worthless, but the fabric can be reused. Your props might sell to another performer. You're watching your life being picked over like a corpse. They escort you out, not roughly but firmly, down the stairs for the last time, past your neighbour's door. He's not there, or he's pretending not to be. You don't blame him. Getting involved in evictions is asking for trouble. Out into the street where a thin snow is falling again. The cold hits you immediately. You're weak and feverish and barely able to walk. The men point you in the direction of the nearest workhouse and leave you to it. Their job is done. What happens to you now is not their concern. The walk to the workhouse is the longest of your life. It's not actually that far, maybe a mile, but in your condition it might as well be 10 miles. You're stopping every few minutes to rest, leaning against walls, sitting on steps. Your bundle feels like it weighs 100 pounds. Your shoulder is a constant burning agony. Your feet are numb in your worn boots. Each breath hurts your chest. You're coughing now, that same wet cough everyone has. Your body is failing in multiple ways at once. The streets are busy with morning traffic. People hurry past you without a glance. You're just another unfortunate, completely unremarkable in a city full of poverty and suffering. Carts and carriages rumble past, their wheels splashing through icy puddles. Vendors are calling their wares. Shop owners are opening for business. Normal life continues while yours ends. No one knows or cares that you're walking to the workhouse, that you've failed completely at surviving in Victorian London. You're invisible in your misery. Halfway there, you have to stop and rest properly. You find a doorway and sink down into it, your back against the door. You're shaking with exhaustion and fever. A woman stops and looks at you. For a moment, you think she's going to offer help. Then she sees your condition more clearly and her expression hardens. She thinks you're drunk or worse. She hurries past. You don't have the energy to explain. Let her think what she wants. You close your eyes and try to gather strength for the rest of the journey. When you open your eyes again, the light has changed. You dozed off sitting in the doorway. How long were you asleep? An hour? Minutes? You have no idea. The cold has penetrated deeper during your rest. You're so stiff you can barely move. Getting back to your feet is a monumental effort. Your legs don't want to work properly. You stagger like a drunk, catching yourself against the wall. Someone laughs as they pass. You ignore them, one foot in front of the other. That's all you can manage. The workhouse finally appears ahead. A large, grim building of dark brick with small windows. It looks like a prison. In many ways, it is a prison. You're about to voluntarily enter a place you'll hate, but it's shelter, it's food, it's survival. You stumble up to the entrance and knock. The door is opened by a stern-looking woman who assesses you with one sweeping glance. She's seen hundreds like you, broken people with nowhere else to go. She asks your name and situation. You explain briefly. No work, injured, nowhere to live. The standard story. She nods and lets you in. Inside the workhouse, the air is stuffy and smells of unwashed bodies and boiled cabbage. You're processed like cargo. Your name is written in a ledger. Your small bundle of possessions is taken away to be examined. You're told you'll get them back when you leave, if you leave. You're directed to a room where you're supposed to wash. The water is cold and there's a sliver of harsh soap. You do your best with one functioning arm. The water is shocking against your feverish skin. You dry off with a thin rough towel and are given workhouse clothes, grey and shapeless and smelling of other people. The uniform hangs on your thin frame. You've lost so much weight. Your ribs show clearly. Your face is gaunt. You look like what you are, someone at the absolute bottom. You're directed to the men's ward, a long room lined with narrow beds. It's full of other men in the same situation. Some old, some young, all broken in various ways. The noise level is constant. Coughs, snores, muttered conversations, someone crying quietly. This is where you'll sleep now. One bed among dozens. No privacy, no comfort, just basic shelter. A meal is served in a common dining hall. Watery soup and a chunk of bread. It's not much, but it's more than you've eaten in days. You force it down even though your stomach is cramping. Your body needs fuel. Around you, other inmates eat in silence. There's no conversation. Everyone is too tired and defeated to bother with social niceties. You're all just trying to survive another day. The similarity to your performing life is striking. Same exhaustion, same hunger, same grinding misery. Just a different building. After the meal, you're told your work assignment. Despite your injured shoulder, they're putting you on picking oakum. It's considered light work, suitable for the weak and injured. You'll be given old rope that needs to be untwisted into fibres. The fibres are sold for various uses. It's tedious, and your fingers will hurt, but it's better than harder labour. You're shown to a room where other inmates are already working. They sit on benches picking at rope, their fingers moving mechanically. You take a seat and are given a bundle of old rope. The supervisor demonstrates the technique and leaves you to it. The work is mind-numbing. You pick at the rope fibres with your good hand, trying to separate them. Your fingers are clumsy from cold and weakness. The rope is rough and scratches your already damaged hands. After an hour, your fingers are bleeding from small cuts. After 2 hours, your back is aching from hunching over. After 3 hours, you're struggling to stay awake. This is your life now. Picking rope apart in a cold room in exchange for watery soup and a hard bed. It's survival, but barely. The day drags on forever. Pick, pick, pick at the rope. Your pile of separated fibres grows slowly. Other inmates work beside you in silence. No one talks. Talking means energy, and no one has energy to spare. You're all automatons performing pointless labour because it's better than starving on the street. The Victorian economy has reduced you to this. Your dreams of being a successful magician seem laughable now. You were never going to make it. The system was designed to break you, and it succeeded. Weeks pass in the workhouse, each day identical to the last. Your hands have developed thick calluses from the constant rope work. Your fingers are permanently stained brown from the tarred fibres. Your shoulder has healed enough that you can use it for light tasks, though it still aches constantly, and you've lost significant range of motion. You'll never be able to perform sleight of hand the way you used to. That part of your life is definitely over. The workhouse has given you survival, but taken away any possibility of returning to your former profession. You start to understand the other inmates better. Most have similar stories. Workers injured on the job, performers who broke down, shop workers who got sick and lost their positions, servants who became too old to work. Everyone here is a casualty of the Victorian economic system that has no room for the weak or unlucky. There's a former acrobat 3 beds down who shattered his leg in a fall. A seamstress who went blind from years of close work in poor light. A clerk who developed a tremor and could no longer write. All of you were discarded when you stopped being useful. The routine becomes almost bearable through sheer familiarity. You know exactly what to expect each day. The certainty is oddly comforting after the chaos and fear of your final days as a performer. Here, you don't have to worry about making rent or finding work or performing while injured. The workhouse makes all decisions for you. You're stripped of autonomy, but also of responsibility. It's a strange trade. You've exchanged freedom for basic survival. Many people would say, you made the wrong choice. But those people have never been truly desperate. One day, there's a disruption to the routine. A group of visitors comes through the workhouse, charitable ladies doing their good works, wanting to see where their donations go. They walk through the picking room with handkerchiefs pressed to their noses, their fine dresses carefully lifted away from the dirty floor. They look at the inmates with a mixture of pity and disgust. You keep your head down and keep working. Being noticed by these visitors is not desirable. They might want to pray over you or offer unsolicited advice about moral character. One of the ladies stops near you and asks the supervisor about your injury. He explains you're a former performer who broke down. She asks what you performed. Magic tricks, the supervisor says dismissively. Parlour tricks and nonsense. The lady makes a sympathetic noise and moves on. You feel a surge of anger. Your act wasn't nonsense. It took skill and practice and dedication. You worked yourself to breaking point trying to master your craft. But to her, you're just another unfortunate who made poor choices. The middle classes never understand how close they are to ending up in places like this. A few bad breaks, and they'd be here too. The visitors leave and the workhouse returns to its normal rhythm. But something has shifted in you. The anger sparked by that dismissive comment grows into determination. You don't want to die here. You don't want to become one of the hollow-eyed long-term inmates who've given up completely. You're still young enough to recover. Your shoulder is healing. You're eating regularly. If you could get out, if you could find some kind of work, maybe you could claw your way back to something resembling a life. It wouldn't be performing. Those dreams are dead. But something, anything other than this. You start paying attention to which inmates are allowed out for work assignments. The workhouse hires out able-bodied inmates to local businesses for day labour. The inmates get nothing but the workhouse gets paid. It's another way the system extracts value from desperate people. But it's also a chance to get outside, to see the city again, to potentially make connections that could lead to permanent work elsewhere. You need to get your name on those assignments. You need to prove you're capable of more than picking oakum. You start working harder, faster, producing more separated fibers each day. You make sure the supervisors notice your improved output. You volunteer for any task that needs doing, even unpleasant ones like cleaning the privies or hauling coal. You're trying to demonstrate reliability and capability. It works. After a few weeks, you're put on a list for outside work assignments. The first one is brutal labor, loading and unloading wagons at a warehouse. Your shoulder protests violently, but you push through it. You're proving yourself. The work assignments become semi-regular. A few days a week, you're sent out with a group of other inmates to various jobs around the city. Construction sites, warehouses, docks, factories. The work is hard and you're not paid. But you're outside. You're seeing the city again. You're reminded that there's a world beyond the workhouse walls. Other workers treat you with casual contempt. Workhouse labour is considered the absolute bottom. You're less than servants, less than apprentices, barely human in the eyes of regular workers. But you endure it because the alternative is rotting away inside picking rope forever. On one assignment, you're sent to a print shop to help move heavy equipment. The owner is a gruff man who works his regular employees hard and expects even more from workhouse labour since it's essentially free. You're hauling metal-type cases and wooden frames up and down stairs all day. It's exhausting and your shoulder is screaming. But you notice things. The shop is busy. They're printing advertisements, pamphlets, cheap newspapers. There's constant work, and they're short-staffed. Several times you hear the owner complaining about not having enough hands. During a break, you take a calculated risk. You approach the owner and ask if he ever hires permanent workers. He looks at you suspiciously. You're workhouse labour, the bottom of society. Why would he hire you? You explain quickly that you're able-bodied, a hard worker, desperate for a real position. He asks what you did before the workhouse. You hedge and say you were in entertainment, but that didn't work out. He snorts. Typical performer, he says. No practical skills. But he's desperate enough for help that he asks what you can do. You think quickly. You can read and write, basic skills that not all workers have. You've got good hand coordination from years of magic. You can learn quickly. The owner considers. He says if you can get released from the workhouse, he might consider a trial period. Might. No promises. But it's more hope than you've had in months. You return to the workhouse that evening with a small flame of possibility burning in your chest. Getting released won't be easy. The workhouse doesn't let people go without good reason. You'll need to prove you have employment waiting. You'll need to demonstrate you won't immediately end up back on the street. But it's possible. Just barely possible. You start planning carefully. You work even harder on your assignments, making sure you're seen as reliable. You save every scrap of food you can from meals, hiding bits of bread in your clothes to supplement your diet and build strength. You exercise your shoulder carefully, trying to improve its mobility. You're preparing yourself for the possibility of release. It might not happen. The print shop owner might change his mind, but you have to try. The alternative is accepting the workhouse as your permanent home. Weeks pass. You're sent back to the print shop several times. Each time you make sure the owner sees you working hard, following instructions, causing no problems. You're selling yourself as a potential employee without being obvious about it. Finally, one day the owner pulls you aside. He's willing to offer you a trial. 1 month, very low pay if you can get workhouse release. If you work out, he might keep you on permanently. It's the thinnest of chances, but it's something. You thank him profusely and return to the workhouse to begin the process of applying for release. Adjusting to life outside the workhouse is harder than you expected. The print shop days are long, starting before dawn and ending after dark. Your body, which had just started recovering in the workhouse, is being pushed hard again. Your shoulder aches constantly. By the end of each shift, your back is in knots and your hands are stained black with ink. The smell of printer's ink and chemicals becomes so familiar you stop noticing it. You're sweating through your clothes daily despite the cold, because the workspace is heated for the equipment. It's different discomfort than performing, but it's still grinding physical misery. The room you've rented is barely better than your previous accommodation. It's a corner of an attic space divided by hanging sheets. You share it with 3 other workers. There's no privacy, no quiet, no comfort. But it's not the workhouse, and that makes it bearable. You've got your own sleeping space, however cramped. You're earning money, however little. You can buy food, however basic. These small freedoms feel enormous after months of institutional control. You can leave the room when you want. You can choose what to eat with your meagre wages. You have autonomy again. The work itself is mind-numbing, but you force yourself to learn everything you can. The owner notices your effort and starts teaching you actual printing skills rather than just manual labor. How to set type, how to operate the smaller presses, how to check proofs. You're not naturally talented at this work, but you're desperate enough to master it through sheer determination. Your hands, once nimble enough for card tricks and coin manipulations, now learn to place tiny metal letters in precise order. It's different dexterity, but your muscle memory helps. Your performing background gives you advantages you didn't expect. Months pass. You're no longer on trial. You've proven yourself reliable enough that the owner keeps you on permanently. The pay increases slightly. Not much, but enough that you can afford marginally better food. You start to rebuild your strength. The hollow gauntness fades. You're still thin, but no longer skeletal. Your shoulder reaches a plateau in its healing. It's never going to be fully functional again. You've lost about 30% of your range of motion. It aches when the weather is cold or damp, which in Victorian London means constantly. But it works well enough for printing work. You've adapted your movements to compensate for its limitations. You see other performers sometimes on the streets, buskers, theatre workers, musicians heading to evening shows. You feel a complicated mix of emotions. Nostalgia for the excitement of performing, relief that you're no longer in that brutal grind, regret for what might have been if circumstances were different, but mostly you feel lucky to have survived. So many performers don't. They break down completely and end up dead in workhouses or gutters. You escaped. Barely, but you did. You're alive and employed, and that's more than many can say. The print shop becomes familiar territory. You know every machine's quirks. You know which workers are reliable and which cut corners. You know the regular customers and their typical orders. You're becoming skilled at your trade. Not passionate about it, you'll never love printing the way you loved magic, but competent, reliable, valuable enough to keep employed. In the Victorian working world, that's all that matters. Passion is a luxury. Survival is the goal. You've accepted this reality. Life settles into a routine. Wake early in your shared attic. Walk to the print shop through dark streets. Work all day setting type, running presses, cleaning equipment. Return to your room exhausted. Eat whatever cheap food you can afford. Sleep poorly due to your roommate's snoring and the general discomfort. Repeat. It's not exciting or fulfilling, but it's stable. Stability is something you've learned to value. The chaos and fear of your performing days taught you that predictable misery is better than unpredictable disaster. You've given up on dreams entirely. You're focused purely on practical survival. Keep the job, pay the rent, Eat enough to maintain strength. Don't get injured. Don't get sick. Don't draw attention. Stay invisible and functional. These are your goals now. The Victorian working class doesn't get to dream big. Those at the bottom are just trying to avoid falling further. You're no longer at the absolute bottom, but you're still close enough that one disaster could send you plummeting back down. You live with constant low-level anxiety about this possibility. Your health is permanently compromised. The months of malnutrition, stress, and inadequate living conditions have left their mark. You catch every illness that goes around. The constant cough that plagued you as a performer never fully went away. Your lungs are probably damaged from breathing smoke and chemical fumes. Your shoulder will never be right. Your hands are prematurely aged, covered in scars and calluses. Your teeth are loose from poor nutrition. You're physically much older than your actual years. This is normal for Victorian workers. Bodies are used up quickly in service of industrial productivity. Sometimes on your walks to work you pass the theatre where you once performed. It's still running shows, still cycling through desperate performers, still consuming and discarding people. You wonder what happened to your assistant, whether they found other work or ended up in the workhouse or worse. You wonder if the manager even remembers you. Probably not. You are utterly replaceable. The theatre has had dozens of acts since you left. You're already forgotten, just another failed performer who couldn't hack it. The thought doesn't hurt as much as it once would have. You've moved beyond caring about that part of your life. You've become what you feared. One of the masses of anonymous working poor who keep Victorian society functioning. You're invisible labour. No one notices you or cares about your story. You're just another person in the street, another worker in the shop, another tenant in a cheap room. You've lost all the characteristics that made you individual. The skills that were unique to performing are useless now. Your personality has been ground down to basic functionality. You're a cog in the industrial machine, identical to thousands of other cogs. This is the reality for most Victorians. Individual identity is a luxury of the middle and upper classes. Yet somehow you've survived. Against odds that seemed impossible during your lowest moments, you're still alive and functional. You're not thriving, you're not happy, but you're surviving. In the context of Victorian working class life, that's actually an achievement. So many don't make it. They die young from disease or malnutrition or industrial accidents. They end up permanent workhouse inmates. They fall into addiction or crime or despair. You've avoided these fates, at least so far. Each day you wake up and keep going is a small victory against a system designed to destroy people like you. Looking back on your time as a Victorian magician feels like remembering a different life. The person who stepped onto that stage full of hope and ambition seems like a stranger. That person believed talent and hard work would be enough. That person didn't understand how brutally Victorian society treats those at the bottom. That person was naive in ways you can no longer imagine being. The education you received was harsh and painful but thorough. You understand now exactly how the world works. It's not designed for people like you to succeed. It's designed to extract maximum labor for minimum cost until you break down, then discard you.